Hello everyone, and welcome again to the Riveting Rhinestone Art. Today we're going to paint a birthday cake like the one I just showed you, except we're going to use different colors. And it's really easy to do. So get your watercolor paper and paints and brushes, and I'm using a masking tape. I readjusted a few times to, I want to get some straight lines to make the edges of the cake. You could put it as far away from the edge or as close to the edge as you like. And I am fixing this a lot. So again, get your watercolors. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need fancy brushes to do this. This painting takes about 30 minutes. So I'm making sure these tape lines are straight for the sides and the bottom of the cake. And again, take your time with this. Be patient with yourself. And remember that it takes a full 24 hours to see how your paints are going to dry on your paper. And I'm using a watercolor paper by Strathmore, and this is a small pad I'm using, and then I cut the page in half. I actually kind of ripped it, and so the painting paper size turns out to be 5.5 inches high by 4.25 wide. So it's a small painting. This is a flat brush. Again, not a fancy brush. It has a very straight edge, and that's what you want to create the layers of the cake. And I'm doing 4 layers. So this cake I want to do in lighter tones, in pinks and mauves. I'm going to do the top layer first. You see how the tape is going to create those straight lines. And I'm using a nude tone or a blush paint right here. I am going to blend it with another color. You could use any colors that you like. And at the end of the painting, I use a pen to outline the whole thing. You don't have to do that. And I also add a cake dish. And you don't have to do that either. You could just paint the cake. So now I'm going to do the bottom layer, just so that that top layer could dry a little bit and it won't accidentally bleed into each other. This color is like a dark mauve on the bottom. Just go over it a few times. I'm not really mixing any colors. I'm just taking it straight from the palette with water. I shouldn't say palettes, straight from the pan paints. This color is so pretty, and the video doesn't do it much justice. It's like a rose with a little bit of peach in it. Very soft, very pretty. Trying to figure out what color I want to use for that second layer. And again, I'm using that flat edged brush, and I'm leaving space, as you could see, in between each layer. And I did follow along. There was someone else's tutorial on this on YouTube. She did it really, really well. And I thought I'd give it a shot and you guys could try it along with me. Again, this video is in real time, so it will take about 30 minutes to do this painting. So as you could see, I chose like a burnt orange, yellow for the middle, the second layer, I should say. I'm going to darken that top layer just a little bit. And again, you could use any colors you want. And don't get discouraged if I'm also using a hairdryer to speed this up a little bit. Don't get discouraged if you're past your painting and you think it looks terrible. And if you hear a phone ringing in the background, yes, that's my phone. Doesn't take much to dry this. And you could also pause and restart the video anytime you want, or rewind it. Now I'm peeling off the tape, and if you notice when I peel it off at an angle. Why do I do that? I peel it off at an angle so that the paint doesn't rip off or the paper doesn't rip. See the angle I pulled it at? Now, there you go. You have a cake. Now you could just add candles to this, and that's perfect just the way it is. But I'm going to take it a few steps further. So I'm putting another piece of tape because I want the line for my cake dish to be super straight. And I'm recording the instructions after I painted it. So sometimes I don't know what it was I'm doing. Okay, so to paint the candles, I'm starting with the center one first. I'm going to do 5 candles. And I'm just using the white paint from the watercolor pan. I am not using gouache. And for those of you that are new to watercolors, gouache is a bit of a thicker type of paint, though you can wash it out with the plain water. And with the gouache, the colors are more vibrant, but I'm not using that here. This is plain watercolor right from the pan of watercolor paints. And I'm adding here a little bit of gray to give the candle some dimension. I like to start with the center candle because then you could just add the other candles around the side, and it's just easier to make them look even across the top of the cake. And these don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be all exactly the same size. In fact, it's better if they're not. It gives them more, it makes them look more real. I started painting, I think, as a kid. And since watercolor is usually like the first paints that children use, it's easier to clean up. I kind of stuck with it. I didn't go to school for art, but while I was in grade school, we experimented with all types of medium, and I always just came back to watercolor. Now here I'm just using the tip of this very small brush to make the candles look more rectangular, and I'm putting another thin line of gray down one side to give it dimension. fill out the shape a little bit. And this doesn't have to be perfect, and have some patience with yourself if you're getting frustrated. Because remember, it doesn't really fully develop for a day or so. Well, probably a day, maybe 5 or 6 hours, to be honest with you. At least that's what I find. So now my candles are in. Oh, I don't need that brush. Had a mind of its own. Start out using this very thin brush. And I don't really like the way that's coming out. I'm going to switch to that. It's also a small brush, but has a fuller amount of bristles on it. I'm using a light blue or turquoise, aqua. I'm so bad with naming colors. Blue. Let's call it light blue. And when I'm not painting, I'm just rinsing my brush. And now I'm going to go to the flame. So I'm using that very fine tipped brush in a bright yellow paint, if you could see it. Giving those flames a little point at the top. Again, if this is too fast for you, you could just pause it. And I'm going to, once I get done with this bright yellow for the flames, I'm going to add a little orange at the base, kind of drag it up through the top. I'm also going to add a little bit of brown right at the base. I'm taking out my other painting just for some reference. I do add, like I was saying, a little bit of brown to the base of each candle, the flame, the base of the flame. Because if you look at a candle flame, it's pretty dark at the bottom towards the wick, right? Almost black. And then those orangey yellow colors are throughout the entire flame of each candle. Yeah, add a little bit of brown there. And I'm very gently outlining certain sections of each flame, not outlining the whole thing. And if you want to do that, feel free to do so. I'm showing you my markers there. I was just about to do something and I realized, oh, I don't have to do that. No. So the two markers that I use at the end to draw the wicks and outline the cake, they are the company says Pigma micron on it, archival ink. And it says micro pigment ink for waterproof and fade proof fine lines. And I chose these markers because I do want it to be waterproof. I don't want it to run into the watercolor paint. Of course, I'm going to wait till they're pretty much dry, but I wanted a sharp, crisp line to do the outlining. I don't want the lines to fade. So I have one pen in a brown ink and one in a black ink, and I'm going to use the black ink for this painting. So now I'm painting the base. I'm going to be honest with you, I think I made a mistake. I should have done it like the other one, just a simple triangle, because this is a very crisp type of a painting, not many angles and curves. So I'm not quite sure about this. So I'm using the same aqua blue. And later on, I didn't really like how the serving dish came out. So I altered the perception of it with the black markers that I was just talking about. The shape of it, I should say. I am going to have these printed on cardstock for my own family's use. So when we have a birthday, we have a couple of different styles to send out to our family and friends. And I may put some, when I get them printed, in my Etsy shop. So you guys could purchase them if you want. I love having generic birthday cards around, or congratulation cards. How many times is it someone's birthday, there goes that phone again, or friend's birthday and you just can't get out to the store? So what I'm doing here is using just the white watercolor paint. I am painting the illusion of leaves, tiny little leaves as decoration, little dots in between. And I add decoration on the first layer, and I'm also going to add decorations on that third layer. So you might want to make your first and third layers a little darker color, at least so that the white shows up. Now on this layer, I'm I'm going to add a little row of dots, like in curves. And what I'm doing here is I'm correcting this. That was too big of a dot, in my opinion. Too much water. Still don't like that. Just gonna use a little edge of paper towel or tissue to soak up the excess water and paint. So this decoration, it's going to look like little tiny pearls once it's done. And I put them in half circles. Again, this is real time, so I'm going to be quiet at some moments and just follow along. The second layer of dots, the curve is going to go over like the dipped part on the bottom, if that makes sense. Just follow along, you'll see what I'm doing. You see how I'm filling in over the curve? And then I go back a little bit to make those white dots a little darker, just by adding a little more white paint. And again, this is just the white watercolor paint that's in the set of pan paints. And those paints are by Artist Loft, and Michaels carries this brand of paint. And here's the pen I was talking about, Pigma Micron. It's a very fine tip and it's waterproof. And again, you could just leave the painting exactly the way it is, but I'm drawing little wicks in, and then I'm going to outline the entire painting. And at first I was a bit apprehensive about that. I'm like, oh, why not? Let's give it a shot. And it does add, I keep using the word dimension or depth to each segment of the painting. And what's great about this is you don't have to be perfect. You could actually make the lines like very loose. You could go over it a few times, not perfect, kind of scribbly. When I was watching someone else who did this in their video, they used those words, like kind of like scribbly. So you could do it very exact and clean, or loose, not quite touching the edges of the painting. And I really like that. I think it looks professional. I don't know if that's the right word. I realized I forgot something before I line the layers of the cake. In between the cake, I want to put some color to represent like a layer of icing or just cake itself. So I'm going to use like a light brown to represent like maybe a chocolate layer. The other birthday cake I did was yellow, like a yellow cake. It's also good to wait or use the blow dryer to make sure the layers of cake themselves are dry, because you're adding watercolor and it could bleed into the this little layer that we're doing. I am rounding the edges of the filling, so to speak. And again, you didn't have to put any decoration. Oh, you see, I made a mistake here where the paint kind of leaked over, or I hit the edge of the painting. And I do delete all of the background noises before I record over it, and I let out an audible gasp when I did that. So you just take a paintbrush, a clean paintbrush, clean water on it, and like I just did a few seconds ago, you kind of like wash it away. It's literally washing the paint away and using a tissue or a sponge or paper towel to wipe it up. Now back to the cake layer. Back to my very thin brush. To add that little layer of, we'll call it chocolate filling. And I said earlier in the video, I am going to have these birthday cakes printed on cardstock. So that way I could have birthday cards on hand with one of my original prints on it. I think that's pretty cool. And eventually they will wind up in my not Canva, sorry. I do use Canva for other things. My Etsy shop where I sell my artwork. And the Etsy shop is called The Riveting Rhinestone Art. And that link will be in the description of this video if you want to check out my paintings to purchase and stationery note cards. Okay, now I could finally outline the layers of this really cute cake, which is making me want a piece of cake. I might even do another birthday cake painting in shades of blue. Not sure yet. It's just a fun little painting to do. And again, if you choose to paint along with me, this is a small painting, but you could do this larger, in a larger size. Just keep in mind it will take you longer. And then, you know what? Maybe not, because you might like to work on a larger scale. I like to work smaller. This is where I think I go a little awry with the base. It's not quite even. And you won't see it on this video, but I do correct it with, I just add some more of those scribbly black lines with the marker to even it out. It's almost done. So I'm gonna always make sure you sign your art. I like to sign it with my initials and the year. And there it is. I hope you enjoyed it, and leave me comments and subscribe and let me know how you did.